theyeshiva.net.
In 1988, at the age of 15, a young Jacobson began serving on a small team of oral scribes and human recorders. They were charged with memorizing and transcribing 3 to 7 hours of talks by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which were presented on Shabbat and Jewish holidays when recording devices are not used. Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Jacobson was the first rabbi ever to be invited by the Pentagon to deliver the religious keynote to the U.S. military chief of chaplains and to the National Security Agency. Rabbi Jacobson founded and serves as the dean of the yeshiva.net, teaching via the web one of the largest Torah classes in the world today with thousands of students globally. It is my privilege and honor to introduce to you the keynote speaker of tonight's gala, Rabbi Yosef Jacobson.
So the Jew, a Hindu, and a politician went hiking. They went hiking in Texas. After a long day of hiking, their bones weary, exhausted from a strenuous workout, they were searching for a hotel or motel where they can rest their weary bones, but none was to be found. In desperation, they knock on the door of the home of a farmer, a Texan farmer. And when he opens the door, he says, "Yeah, how can I help you folks?" They say, "Can we somehow get some of your southern hospitality and remain here in your home for the night? The moment sun rises, we will be off for the next day of hiking, but we just need a place to stay the night." He says, "Sure. The problem is I only have 2 beds in my home. So one of you 3 will have to sleep in the barn." You have a Jew, you have a politician, you have a Hindu. Who's going to the barn? The Jew is not going to the barn. The politician is certainly not going to the barn. The Hindu goes to the barn. The Jew and the politician take the comfortable beds, and soon they are fast asleep. 10 minutes later, there's a knock on their bedroom. They open the door, the Hindu is by the room. Say, "What's going on?" He says, "There's no way I can sleep in the barn." You say, "Why not?" He says, "I'm a Hindu. There's a cow in the barn. How can a Hindu sleep with a holy cow? By the Hindus, the cow is holy. You know the expression, holy cow. There's no way I can sleep in the barn with a cow." Okay, the Jew says, "I guess I'll have to sleep in the barn." So the Jew goes to the barn. 10 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. The Jew is back. They say, "What's the problem?" The Jew says, "No way on my dead body that I'm going to sleep in the barn." "Why not?" The Jew says, "There's a pig in the barn." How do you expect a Jew to sleep with a pig, with a chazer, with a swine in the same barn? No way. Nope. Who goes to the barn? Politician says, "I guess I'll have to go to the barn." So the Jew and the Hindu go to bed and the politician goes to the barn. 10 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. The Jew and the Hindu open the door and they see the pig and the cow. I share our country coming off a very loaded political season sometimes gives us perspective into the nature of politicians. Which reminds me, a little while before they elected the new president here in America, Donald Trump went to campaign in Miami. Where do you go to campaign in Miami? You go to an old age home. He goes to a home, they call it a home for assisted living, walks in and Trump meets a 95-year-old woman there. And he looks at her and he says, do you know who I am? She says, I don't. Who are you? He says, you don't know who I am? She says, no, I don't. Who are you? He says, I can't believe it. The whole world knows who I am. She says, besides me? He says, look at my hair. Look at the blondness of my hair. Look at the charm. Look at the charisma. Look at the stature. Look at the brilliance. Look at the sophistication. Look at the success. The whole world knows who I am. How don't you know who I am? She says, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. Who are you? He's furious. Like, tell me right now who I am. Another woman, 85 years old, comes over to him and gives him a glet on his bekele, caresses him on his cheeks, and says, relax, relax, relax. I will call the head nurse. She will tell you who you are. You see, this happens very often around here. You're not the first one, you won't be the last one. But don't get so upset. In a few seconds, you'll discover who you are. It's a question of identity. You know, some of you were born on the other side of the ocean. There was a Jew who once came from the Soviet Union, came to America. He was a Hasidic Jew. His name was Moshe Levice. Wanted to become a citizen of this great country. There's a problem. Become a citizen, some of you know, it's a hard process. You have to know the language and you have to know the history, at least as well as Rabbi Kanelsky. You can't just become a citizen. You need to know some of the basics of America. The golden Medina, the great country where, you know, Sam Levinson is a Jewish comedian. He says, when my father came to America from Europe, they told him, this is the country where the streets are paved with gold. Then he came to America and he discovered three things. First of all, the streets are not paved with gold. Second of all, they're not paved at all. Third of all, he has to pave them. Okay? But you know, you remember the news about America and America? America is impeccable, flawless. So he said, how do I become a citizen of this country? His best friend says, Moshe, I'll set you up with a clerk, a Jewish clerk. He's doing this for 50 years. He always asks everybody the same 5 questions. All you need is memorize 5 answers. You don't have to understand a word of English. And you'll pass the test, you'll become a citizen. What are his 5 questions? His first question is always, what's your name? The moment you hear the question, you don't have to understand English. You just say, Moshe Weiss. The second question is, how many children do you have? You hear that, you say 5. Third question, how many states are there in the United States of America? You'll say 50. The fourth question, who was the first president of America? You'll say George Washington. The fifth question, do you have parents? You'll say, thank God both. For 3 months, he memorizes these 5 responses. Moshe Weiss, 5 children, 50 states, etc. The great day comes, he comes into the interview. The man looks at him and says, welcome. We'll do this very fast. I just have 5 questions. Question 1, he turns to the Hasidic Jew and he says, what was the name of the first president of the United States of America? Without skipping a heart's beat, without blinking, he says, Moshe Weiss. He says, tell me something else. How many states are there in the U.S.? He says, 5. He says, tell me, how many children do you have? He says, 50. He looks at this Jew, a Hasidic Jew, a black coat, a big strime, a long sidelocks, a beard. He says, what's your name? Man says, George Washington. He says, I have one last question. He's a Jew, he understands what's happening. He says, tell me, who is Meshuggah in this room, you or me? Just thank God both. So, you see, my friends, you can memorize lines, master techniques, but at some point, if you don't get it, you get stuck. You know, the other day there was a bar mitzvah boy. You ever go to bar mitzvahs? Okay. Bar mitzvah boys, it's a bar or a mitzvah, whatever it is. Oh, you just got that? Okay. It's one of the oldies. So, he wants to give a speech. You know, at bar mitzvah, you have to give a speech, right? Very important in America, you give speeches. Sushi and speeches. The only 2 things that are important. So, he comes to his mother. Mother says, great, what do you want to talk about? I want to talk about where we come from, our origin. Mother says, our origins. our origin. She talks about the family, great family. No, all the way back, where we come from. Where we come from. God created the world in 6 days. On the 6th day, he created Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve decided to have children for whatever reason. And the rest is history, actually her story. And then you had Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel. Here we are. Goes to his father. Father was an enlightened graduate of Columbia University. Says, Dad, where do we come from? All the way back. Oh, after 15.3 billion years, we have evolved from apes. Where have the apes come from? They came from monkeys. Where did the monkeys come from? They came from other primates. How did it all happen? They evolved from the primordial soup. He says, but where did it all begin? He says, it began with an explosion of gas and bacteria. Comes back to his mother and says, Mom, I'm very confused about my bar mitzvah speech. I want to talk about where we come from. You tell me we come from God, Adam, Eve, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah. Dad tells me we come from monkeys, apes, gas, and bacteria. Tell me, where do we come from? What do I say at the bar mitzvah? Mother looks at him and says, son, there's no contradiction. Your father was talking about his side of the family. I'm talking about my side of the family. It's completely no contradiction whatsoever. There's two sides of the family, you know. So my friend, oh, I just got that. It's a funny one. Anyway, you know, there was this guy. There was this fellow. There was this fellow who would come each night to the bar and he would order 2 cups of Crown Royal. 2 big glasses, like some of you, 2 big glasses of Crown Royal or a blue label, a black label. I don't know what your taste is over there on this table. So every night, 2 glasses of Crown Royal. The bartender says, why don't you change your menu? There's a lot of drinks in the bar. Why? I'll tell you, I had a best friend. Every night we had to drink Crown Royal. He died. I want to remember him forever. So each night I drink 2 cups of Crown Royal, 1 for him and 1 for me. I'm going to do this forever. 30 years later, he comes to the bar and he orders 1 glass of Crown Royal. Bartender says, what happened? He says, I'll tell you, I quit drinking. So you have a situation. They say denial. Denial is not only a river in Egypt, it's also part of people's lives. But in a positive sense, some people know how to drink for other people. They know how to celebrate, not only share the cup of loneliness, as Billy Joel would say, but also share the cup of joy. It's a true pleasure and thriller to be in this great community of Bris Avraham, of Fairlawn, where one can sense the warmth and the camaraderie. I grew up in America, but I grew up with Russian parents, very Russian parents. Rabbi Zaltzman can testify. And therefore, I know that there's something unique about the Jewish warmth, romance, passion, sophistication. Yes, I love America. You came here. The streets are paved with gold, especially in New Jersey. But there's 3 types of Jews. There are Shlomils, Shlomazels, and Nudniks. You know the difference? You don't know? I'll tell you. The Shlomil is the guy who pours the soup on the Shlomazel. The Nudnik is the guy who wants to know what type of soup was it. You always have these 3 types. But I see here there's a community where you love to laugh, where you love to celebrate, especially when you have a good comedian. You think I should continue as a rabbi? I could probably make more money the other way around, no? Okay. You know Jackie Mason? He repeats a lot of my jokes. You know that, yeah? So my friends, it's a thriller to be in such an environment, to sense the warmth, the brotherly and sisterly love and affection, created especially by Rabbi Mendel and Elke and Rabbi Zaltzman, and for long years to him is late Rebbitzin, and to be able to see the atmosphere and the love and the bridges that were created. It's extremely powerful. But let me tell you something that I'm thinking about. You know, Jews love to kvetch, right? Yeah, they're still in New Jersey too. In New York, they kvetch all day. That's what they do. Every Jew I know kvetches. Either he's having a heart attack, he's about to have a stroke, his back hurts, his stomach hurts, his neck hurts, he has a headache, his mother-in-law is driving him crazy, his wife is driving him crazy, he wants a divorce, he almost got divorced, he's going to get divorced, she wants to kill him, he wants to kill her. A guy called a rabbi. I know a guy called a rabbi. He says, Rabbi, my wife wants to poison me. He says, really? I found in the tea. She makes me tea in the morning. I found poison. The rabbi says, I got to talk to her. He says, here is her cell. The rabbi talks to her. Jew calls him back next day. He says, no, the rabbi says, I spoke to your wife for 4 hours. If I were you, I would drink it. So Jews, that's what Rabbi Kanelsky meant when he spoke about the power of the Jewish woman. So, it's just a joke, relax, relax. I love women, I even married a woman. It's a big thing today, don't underestimate it. Don't underestimate it. Not only that, my mother is a woman. My grandmother was a woman, my great-grandmother, all the way back to Eve. And then the apes and the monkeys, I don't know what they were. So my friends, you understand what I'm telling you. People kvetch. People love. The other day I was in a kosher restaurant. The waiter was going from table to table and he was asking one question. Is anything all right? That's all it is. Jews complain. They love complaining. And they love complaining more. You ever see Jews on an airplane? You know, I don't go anymore with the Jews on an airplane. Do you know that? I used to go with Jews. Today I only go with Goyim on an airplane. Not because I don't love Jews. I love Jews. I told you. My father was Jewish. My mother is Jewish. I even married a Jewish girl. My kids are half Jewish. My kids are Jewish. But not to fly. Not to fly. You know why? Because they don't sit down. You ever see Jews on an airplane? They don't sit down. You remember Tower Air? There was an airline, Tower. Olav Sholom. I say Kaddish for it every year, but I'm very happy. So New Year's, Hanukkah time, we once landed in Tel Aviv. So the captain gets up and he says, to all those who are sitting, Happy New Year. To all those who are standing, Happy Hanukkah. That's how it is. You ever see Gentiles on airplanes? They walk in 4 hours before. They sit down and they sit like this, like Marines. And they don't come with baggage. They read those magazines in the seats. You ever read those? Jews don't read those magazines. But Gentiles read them. You ever see Jews, the first one, they come late. And they come with peklach, with baggage and suitcase. They're flying to Montreal, for heaven's sake. It's an hour flight. They come with baggage. And they open up every compartment. They go back and forth. Boom, 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 boom. And finally, after 2 hours, the flight attendant starts screaming at him and says, sit down, the whole flight is waiting for you. And he turns to his wife and says, she's an anti-Semite. The Holocaust is not going to happen again. I will not listen to her. And then he says, I forgot my food. They open up, they all bring food. They bring sushi and hard-boiled eggs and sponge cake and polkas. They bring polkas of chicken. That's what they bring. And they all bring 9 books. It's an hour flight, but they have 9 books. I say, what the hell do you need 9 books for? He says, you never know what happens to airplanes these days. You never know. Look at Malaysia. Who knows where I'm going to end up? And then you finally sit down and you fall asleep and somebody says, Mincha! We need a minyan, mincha, mincha. That's why I have a hard time flying with them. They're restless people. Jews are restless. They don't know how to relax. Very hard for Jews to relax. That's what they say. They ask, why don't Jewish women drink? You know why? They don't want anything to interfere with their misery. It's a fact. Jews are a restless people. I love Jews, but we have issues. There's no question. Let's face it, most psychiatrists are Jewish. Most therapists are Jewish. The father of psychoanalysis was Jewish. His name was Shlomo Freud. I know 3 types of Jews. I don't know more. Psychotics, neurotics, and psychiatrists. The psychotics builds castles in the air. The neurotic lives in the castles in the air. And the psychiatrist collects the rent from both of them. And the rent these days is very, very expensive. Extremely expensive. But you know what Jews are most anxious about these days? Anti-Semitism. Do you know that? Wherever I go, anti-Semitism. They're worried with anti-Semitism. There's a bigger problem than anti-Semitism. It's called self-hating Jews. Jews who don't like themselves. They don't like Jews. They're embarrassed with themselves. But anti-Semitism is also a serious problem. Do you know there was a Jew sitting in Central Park? You ever go to Central Park? It's not bad. You sit there, the only normal place in Manhattan. He's sitting on a bench drinking an iced coffee, a latte iced coffee, $9.50. cost in Starbucks. And he's reading a newspaper. And an anti-Semite comes in, punches him in the nose. Can you imagine? Punches him in the nose. And he says, this is a punch from Hamas. Guy's bleeding. Comes a moment later, smacks him in the face and says, this is a smack from Hezbollah. Comes a moment later, kicks him in his abdomen. He says, this is a kick from Iran. Comes a minute later, punches him in his back and says, this is a punch from Syria. The poor Jew is bleeding, black and blue. He gets up and he leaves. The anti-Semite is happy, sits down, takes his iced coffee, takes the newspaper, and continues reading. The Jew comes back a half an hour later. He's holding a wrench. Goes over to this guy, knocks him over the head with all his power as the guy is about to become unconscious. He says, this is a wrench from Home Depot. But, so you see, friends, yes, there's anti-Semitism, but then there's also self-hate. Jews who don't like themselves. I have a senior colleague, Dr. Twersky. He's a big psychiatrist. He was once on an airplane. Now, do you know Dr. Twersky? He's dressed like a real Hasidic Jew. He has a round black hat. You know that look? Long black coat, square white beard. He's on an airplane. A Jewish woman from Russia, an old Jewish woman, turns to him and tells him in Yiddish, Du bist a Schande. You know what a Schande is? You're a disgrace. You're the cause of anti-Semitism. If only you would dress normally, they would stop hating us. But you stand out, and that's why they hate us. He looks at her and he says, which language are you talking in? She says, Yiddish. He says, I don't understand Yiddish. I am Amish. She says, I thought you were Hasidic. He says, no, I'm Amish. She says, I love the Amish. He says, why? She says, because you're a minority. And yet, you maintain your heritage with such pride. I respect you. He looked at her and he said in Yiddish, ob ich wollt gewen Amish, hast du mich lieb. Jetzt, dass ich bin a Yid, hast du mich feind. If I would have been Amish, you'd love me. Now that I'm Jewish, you're embarrassed by me. I bless you to be able to respect in your own people that which you respect in other people. But this is, you see, and here I want to share with you a moment. The moment happens in Montreal, McGill University, where the snow is worse than here. In the late 50s, there's a debate. And the debate takes place between two personalities, Arnold Toynbee and Dr. Jacob Herzog. Arnold Toynbee was a famous British historian, Cambridge University, did not like Jews, did not like Israel. Jacob Herzog was the ambassador of Israel to Canada, a scholar, a rabbi, a very educated man, the son of Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Halevi Herzog, second chief rabbi of Israel, the brother of Chaim Herzog, president of Israel, the uncle of Buzi Yitzchak Herzog, the head of the opposition today. Just to give you context, Dr. Jacob Herzog was a student of Rabbi Isser Zalman Meltzer, one of the great rabbis of Jerusalem. He was a very great man. He died very young, unfortunately. I think he has a book called Nation That Dwells Alone. He debates Toynbee about Israel. Toynbee claims that Jews are not a nation. Judaism is a culture. Why? You have Russian Jews, you have Italian Jews, you have American Jews, you have French Jews. We belong to all nations. We're not a nation. We're a culture, we're a religion. We don't have a homeland. Australian Jews, French Jews, North American Jews, South American Jews, Canadian Jews, Belarus Jews, Ukrainian Jews, Lithuanian Jews, all types, British Jews. We're not a nation, we're a culture. Jacob Herzog asks him, what is a nation? Give me an example. He says the Italians are a nation. The Greeks are a nation. The Jews are not a nation. The Jews are all over the place. They're part of other nations. Herzog responds, the nucleus of the idea is his, developing it a little bit. He says, imagine 3 Olympic airplanes land. One lands in Athens, in Greece. An old man comes out. The man in the airport greets him and says, what's your name? And the old man says, my name is Socrates. And the man in the airport says, what brings you to Athens? He says, what brings me to Athens? He says, my city. He says, my country. He says, I never heard of you. He says, get out of here. Take me to the Acropolis. He says, the Acropolis for $7.50. I can take you to the remnants of the Acropolis. He says, take me to Zeus. He says, we don't worship at Zeus anymore. He says, what do you worship? He says, we have the Greek Orthodox Church. He says, what's the Greek Orthodox Church? He starts explaining to him about the church, which of course developed centuries after Socrates. He says, tell me, how is Greek philosophy doing? He says, I don't know how to say this, it's pretty obsolete. He says, you mean people are not studying Aristotle? People are not studying Plato, my student? People are not studying Socrates? He says, there's a few professors. He says, so what do you talk about in the cafes? He says, we talk about iPhone 6, iPhone 7. Facebook, Instagram, that's what we talk about. Socrates says, how is the Greek Empire doing? How is Alexander the Great's empire doing? He says, empire? They're barely a country and we're not sure if their economy will ever survive. He says, a country? What type of country? He says, a member of NATO. What the hell is NATO? Gives him a lecture on NATO. He says, you mean when the people hear the word Greece, they don't tremble? He says, no, they cry. They get into a bad mood. Socrates says, why aren't you speaking the language of ancient Greek? He says, we don't speak that language anymore. Socrates says, get me out of this place. This is not my Athens. Another airplane lands in Rome. A statesman comes out. Ooh, you could see that he's been through a lot. He even has some wounds on his chest. Somebody from the airport comes up to greet him. Says, welcome to Rome. What is your name? And the man says, my name is Julius Caesar. He says, from the Caesar salad. He says, you moron, I could kill you for that. Julius Caesar, the Caesar of Rome. How is Rome doing? How is the Roman Empire doing? The Roman Empire? There hasn't been a Roman Empire in 1,500 years, thanks to your friend Constantine. He says, so what is Rome? He says, it's a city. A city where? In Italy. He says, what's Italy? He says, Italy is a member of NATO. Take me to my gladiator. He says, for $8 I can show you the remnants. Take me to the Colosseum. For $7 I'll show you some excavations. Take me to the steps of the Senate, where I was stabbed and I uttered those last words, et tu Brute. Then Caesar falls. He says, there's no Senate and there's no steps of the Senate. Take me to my gymnasium. He says, for $9.50 I could show you the remnants. He says, are people still frightened from the word Rome? He says, no. He says, so what are we famous for? He says, pizza and pasta. He says, take me to Venice. He says, we don't worship Venice. What do you worship? He says, we have the Vatican. He says, what the hell is the Vatican? He says, Catholicism. What's Catholicism? So he starts giving him a lecture. He says, you never heard of Catholicism? You never heard of Christianity? You never heard of the Pope? He says, no, what are these things? He says, I'll tell you very briefly. There was a Jewish boy. It all starts with a Jewish boy. Now, every Jewish boy who grows up in a Jewish home with a Jewish mother is told by his mother not only that he's God's gift to humanity, but that he is God himself. That's more or less what every Jewish mother teaches every Jewish child. You are God. However, most of us are lucky enough at some point to marry a Jewish wife. And usually within a few months or a few weeks, and if you're really lucky, a few hours, your wife makes it very clear to you. Not only are you not God, not only are you not God's gift to humanity, but there's even a question if you're entitled to have a position in this world. And for the rest of our lives, most of us are in therapy, negotiating the view of our mother versus the view of our wives. I mean, more or less, that is what most men I know are dealing with. My mother taught me I'm God. My wife thinks I belong in the mousetrap. How do I negotiate these two views? My mother thought I'm infinite. My wife is not sure if I have a right to exist. Not easy. Es ist schwer zu sein a Yid. Now, this little boy, Yoshkala, he never got married. So he continued to believe what every Jewish mother tells her son. And that's how Christianity began. And now 2.5 billion people also believe his mother. Julius Caesar looks at him and says, why don't you speak Latin? He says, who speaks Latin? Few academics speak Latin. He says, what do you speak? Italiano, we speak Italian. Julius Caesar says, this is not my Rome. Bye-bye, I'm out. Leaves. A third airplane lands in Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. An old man comes out, somebody in the airport comes up and greets him and says 2 words to him. Sholom Aleichem. And he responds, Aleichem Shalom. He looks at the old man and he says, Ma shimcha, what is your name? And the old man says, my name is Moshe. And what is your name? He says, Gam ani Moshe. I'm also Moshe. I come from Tbilisi, Georgia. I'm here already 8 months. The Israelis already ripped me off. Maybe you have a donation, Moshe, a donation for my wife and kids. Where do you come from? And old man Moshe says, I come from Egypt. Really? What brings you here? He says, I came to my homeland. He says, have you ever been here before? He says, no. So why do you call it your homeland? Moshe says, I tried getting here for 40 years. I worked very hard to get here. Didn't work out. Trust me, I made a lot of sacrifices for this land. I'm entitled to call it my homeland. He says, Moshe, welcome to your homeland. Old man Moshe looks at him and says, I have an embarrassing question. I was in a rush to come down. Socrates and Julius Caesar were rushing me. They were in a big rush. They thought they're going to discover, they're going to discover the golden streets, the paved golden roads in Athens and Rome. I was in a big rush. He says, okay, what's the problem? He says, I forgot something. He says, what did you forget? Old man Moshe looks at him and says, I'm a little embarrassed. Does anybody in this country have what's called a talit, tefillin? He looks at him and says, now I don't like you anymore. Says, why not? He says, now you're like holier than thou. You think you're the only one who knows what talit and tefillin are? Eze chutzpah! I just was in the airport and the Chabadniks kidnapped me. Like they do everywhere. They put a talit on me. They say, 1 minute, you're Jewish. And they start putting on tefillin on me. I just put on tefillin. Here, look at the stripes. Look. You go in there. They have a kiosk. They have a booth in the airport. You put on talit and tefillin. Moshe says, one more thing. I'm starving. I haven't eaten in a few thousand years. They got no normal food in heaven. Tuna and jarred gefilte fish. It's not a Jewish food. Do they have any food in Israel? He says, food in Israel? They don't stop eating. In the airport itself, they have 90 restaurants. Moshe says, you don't understand. I need kosher. They have kosher? He says, kosher? They have every type of kosher. And every conceivable type of kosher certificate. They have glatt, not glatt, almost glatt, semi-glatt, kosher style, almost kosher style, dairy glatt, deli glatt, mahadrin rabbanut, mahadrin mina mahadrin, almost kosher, tomorrow kosher, yesterday kosher, Rabbi Landau Badatz, Eida Chreidis Jerusalem, he doesn't eat this, he doesn't eat this. They have every type of kosher in the world. Thai kosher, French kosher, Italian kosher, New Zealand kosher, Brazilian kosher, Russian, every type of Japanese, Chinese, everything they have kosher. Wow. So Moshe comes down. And as they go out one of the doors, this Jew from Tbilisi kisses the doorpost. Mwah! Says, what are you doing? Says, now you should be embarrassed. You don't know what this is? He says, what is it? He says, it's a mezuzah. Says, what's a mezuzah? He says, let me give you some basic Jewish knowledge. 3,000 years ago, we had a teacher. His name was also Moshe. And he told the Jewish people to put a parchment of the Torah on every door of your office, of your home, of your bedroom. And we kiss it every time we go in and out. And then he says, now let me show you a little bit of what happens here. Moshe hears a song. He says, what's this? He takes him in. And there's a little classroom. And there's a teacher. And the teacher is speaking to his little children, to his students. And he asks the students to open up their Chumash, to open up the Torah, the Bible. And he says, repeat after me. And they repeat after him these words from the Torah. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. And God spoke to Moses, saying, and two large hot pearls that we call tears stream down the cheeks of Moses as he observes this phenomenon in the Israeli classroom. Dr. Herzog turns to Dr. Toynbee at McGill University at this debate, and he says, Dr. Toynbee, if Socrates or Julius Caesar come back today to Greece or to Italy, to Athens or to Rome, what will they find? Not the same language, not the same culture, not the same values, not the same God, not the same faith, not the same traditions, not the same heritage, not the same culture, not the same lifestyle, not the same philosophy. All that remains is the geographical soil. And yet, you call them a nation. The French are a nation. The Italian are a nation. The Greeks are a nation. If Moshe Rabbeinu comes back today to the Holy Land, to Israel, what will he discover? The same language, the same traditions, the same God, the same mitzvot, the same exact tzitzis, the same exact tefillin, the same exact ram's horn, shofar, the same lulav, the same Shabbat, the same Torah, the same Yiddishkeit, the same God, the same philosophy, the same values, the same traditions, and even the same arguments. And yet, you don't call that a nation? That's not a nation. We're not a nation. Dr. Toynbee, if Israel is not a nation, what is a nation? And to his credit, Dr. Toynbee looked at Dr. Herzog and said, you have a point. Not easy for Arnold Toynbee. And it was at that moment that I discovered the power of Jewish continuity. That after thousands of years, if Moses, Joshua, King David, King Solomon, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Rashi or Maimonides, the Baal Shem Tov or the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Isaac Luria, Rabbi Yosef Karo, would walk in to Bris Avraham of Fairlawn, New Jersey, The entire world changed. There's nothing that you could recognize today from 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. But the same exact Torah, the same exact mitzvot, the same exact text. Even the matzah tastes exactly the same. In fact, it was stale a few thousand years ago, and it's still stale. Nothing changed. Even the gefilte fish tastes the same. The same kiddush, the same experience, the same Judaism. That's the power of Judaism. And it's the power that allowed the Jewish people to survive and thrive despite everything. What did we have that the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Persians, the Romans, the Byzantines didn't have? They had greater armies, greater empires, greater military prowess, greater technology, greater monuments. What did we have that they didn't have? Why are they gone? Where is Julius Caesar? Where is Socrates? Where is Titus? Where is Vespasian? Where is Caligula? Where is Adrian? Where is Pompey? Where is Tiberius? Where is Nebuchadnezzar, Paro, Sancheriv? Where is Goebbels? Where is Himmler? Where is Stalin? Where are they? The answer is they are in Wikipedia. You could Google when I finish talking Wikipedia and you'll have a long entry on each of them. Where are the Jewish people? The tiny nation that has been hunted down generation after generation. Where are they? I'll tell you, we created Wikipedia. That's the fact. Take a look at the 4 great revolutions that shaped the last century. Who created them? The revolution in politics, a name you know very well, Karl Marx. Revolution in psychology, Sigmund Freud. Revolution in science and physics, Albert Einstein. Revolution in biology, Charles Darwin. These 4 people changed the world. Marx, Einstein, Freud, and Darwin. 3 of them were Jewish. Darwin was wrong. Because our people were created not to play Little League, but to play Big League. Not to be followers, but to be leaders. Not to be victims, but to be moral teachers of society. We were charged as the ambassadors of God, ambassadors of love, light, and hope, to bring the world from Sinai to redemption, from Sinai to Mashiach, to turn the world into the place it was destined to be, to reflect the harmony, the goodness of its creator, through its Torah, through the mitzvahs, and through acts of goodness and kindness. This is a nation that gambles with eternity. We don't know how to play small league. I wish we would. We're always center stage and always big league somehow. I can't figure it out. We don't constitute even 1/4% of humanity. Do you know that? We don't constitute 1/4%, but the noise we make, God preserve us. The number of the Jewish people is smaller than a statistical error in a Chinese census. But the ruckus, because the Jew was given the gift of Torah, and the gift of Torah allows eternity. Now imagine what would happen if Mozart grew up in a house without a piano. What would happen to Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart? What would happen? Anybody? Where would the genius go? It would go somewhere, but it wouldn't have a healthy outlet. And it may be destructive because it's too powerful. Thank God Mozart had a piano. Jews are Mozarts. Every Jew is a little Mozart. If you don't believe me, ask your mother. Every Jew is a little Mozart. Tremendous power, tremendous divine energy, but we need a piano. The piano of the Jewish people has been the Torah. It is what managed to harness and direct the greatest talents and resources of the Jewish people to invest it in that which is timeless and eternal. And it's what we had that the other empires did not have. The dedication to Jewish education, the dedication to the daily mitzvot, to the celebration of Jewish life on a day-to-day basis. Now you might ask me a question. How can me giving my child a Torah education survive eternity? Great question. But the fact is that thousands of years later, we are here today. Not exhausted, not numb, not lifeless, as fresh, as pulsating, and as creative as ever. Friends, a few weeks ago, I took a group of 65 university students from America. I took them on a trip to Eastern Europe, to Poland, to Russia, to the origin where many of you come from, where you come from, where your parents come from, where I come from, where the Chabad movement was born, Belarus, Russia, Ukraine, where the Baal Shem Tov was born. It was a very meaningful trip, extremely meaningful. And one of the cities we traveled by is a city named Dumbrov. It's a city in Poland. It was a town before the war with thousands of Jews. Russia had millions. Poland had 3.5 million Jews. Today, a few thousand left. In Dumbrov, the SS gathered all the Jews Friday afternoon and marched them to a forest. And when they marched them to a forest, they had the Jews dig graves. The SS went to eat lunch, and they got drunk, which was a strategy. They told the SS murderers, the Einsatzgruppes, who would go from city to city, town to town in Belarus, in the Ukraine, and parts of Poland, to be drunk. That way they would be more oblivious to what's going on and what they're doing. And they were drinking and laughing and enjoying, and the Jews were sitting and waiting. It was Friday. It was late Friday afternoon, and the sun was slowly setting. And one of the Jews sitting on the ground stands up, and he turns to a few thousand men, women, and children, and he says to them these words. He says, the Germans don't only want to destroy us. They don't only want to kill our bodies. They want to murder our spirits. They want to crush our souls. They want us to be embarrassed that we are Jews. We may not be able to save our bodies, but let's not give them the victory of destroying our souls. And therefore I say, this is our last opportunity to welcome the holy day of Shabbat, because next week we will welcome the Shabbat in heaven. This is the last time we can welcome Shabbos here on earth. And therefore, friends, I ask you all, whoever wants, join me. And he tells to the Jews, let's welcome our last Shabbos here on earth with song and with spirit. And he begins, Sholom Aleichem, Malachei Ashores, Malachei Eliyah. The Jews hear the song, so the other groups start joining. Oyemi Melech, Malachei Amelochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Within 2 to 3 minutes, you had thousands of Jews singing together. Malachei Eliyah, Oyemi Melech, Malachei Amelochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was surreal. Jews in a forest in front of two pits in the thousands. But it sounded like a symphony out of paradise. Sholom Aleichem Malachei Yashares Malachei Elyon Hoimi Melech Malachei Amelachim. Now in the beginning, the SS, the Germans, thought it was cute. The Jews are singing. But after a few moments, they felt that there's something off. There's too much spirit. And they ran over. And they began shouting at the Jews to be quiet. Verfluchtete Juden stiegen. Cursed Jews, quiet, silence. But at this point, as they say, if you got nothing, you got nothing to lose. They understood that they really have nothing to lose. And in their hearts, they imagined themselves sitting in their homes around their Shabbos tables. The table bedecked in white, the Shabbat candles burning and glowing, the father, the king, the mother, the queen, the boys, the princes, and the girls, the princesses, dressed in their most beautiful garments, singing as a family, bonding together in a semi-paradise here on earth, which is what a home saturated with Shabbat looks like. And in their minds, they connected to hundreds of generations of Jews who each week stopped and went out of the world that's hustling and bustling, stressful and anxious, and welcomed the holy day. And thus their song continued. Sholom Aleichem Malachei Yashares Malachei Elyon Hoimi Melech Malachei Amelachim. The SS were infuriated. As they hollered more, the Jews just continued singing. They finally shouted and said, if you don't stop singing right now, we will shoot. But they knew that that was the plan regardless. The pits were waiting. They continued singing. And the shooting began. The mass murder began. But two Jews ran. They ran, dodging the bullets to the forests. The SS tried to pursue them, but they somehow got away. They survived the war with the partisans in the forests. And for the rest of their lives, they told a story about how the holy Jewish community of Dumbrov died as Shabbat descended on the horizon of the forest around Dumbrov, in middle of the song of Shalom Aleichem, interrupted by the bullets, the screams, the cries, the bloodshed, and the horror of that Friday evening. And I thought to myself, my dear friends, isn't that why you and I are here this evening? To make sure that that melody will never get interrupted. Who will make sure that the sacred melody of those Jews, of those children, of those women, of those men will not be interrupted for eternity? Who will make sure that their melody, their song, their ballad, their symphony, their lives, their passions, their ideals, and their values will continue? If not you and I, who will tonight embrace our great calling as the people of eternity to continue singing their song until the great day when Shalom Aleichem, when the peace and the serenity of Shabbat, the Yom Shekuloi Shabbat, the day that will be full of Shabbat, will overwhelm our entire aching planet speedily in our days. Amen. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Jacobson.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.